Hey everyone, Token Dave over here. Dorky Token Black Guy who's just trying to get by. And welcome to another edition of Comic Book Concepts. Here, I like to talk about certain jargon, items, slang, and other terminology that comic book fans like to use when they describe their favorite superheroes and villains during certain events within comics. Keep in mind that everything that I state in comic book concepts are not solely comic book related. They can actually be applied to other works of fiction such as science, sci-fi, and fantasy. So, as you can see, I'm actually getting photobombed by Mellow the Menace right here. But that's not going to distract us or anything. Let's go into basically the second era of comics, which is known as the Silver Age. Now, the Silver Age started anywhere. It's documented that started in the 50s, 1950, all the way up until 1970. I kind of disagree with that. In my view, my perspective, the Silver Age began in 1956 and it actually ended in 1971. And I'll explain why in a little bit here and also in the next video. But the Silver Age is basically important for a couple of reasons. The biggest thing is basically, the fact that this is a time period where, comic books got their major revival. You see, after the events of like World War II winding down, the golden age of comics basically, started shifting away from superheroes, and basically with all the other comics that were being made, like westerns, romances, like, funny, goofy, childish ones, that actually took more precedent, and comic books themselves started to decline. And something else also happened, like, after World War II and, stretching into the 50s, mainstream started becoming more interested and concerned of basically science fiction and space. So if you notice, around the 50s, we had like basically, the rise of like, more and more horror movies, and most of these horror movies like had to deal with things in space, as well as other mediums, entertainment mediums, focusing more on science fiction. This is where things get a little interesting when it comes to comics, because basically in comics at this time, they started to incorporate more science fiction relevant things within the comics, and one major thing that occurred is in 1956 when we actually got introduced to the Flash, a new Flash, because this was not the same Flash from the Golden Era. The Golden Era Flash was Jay Garrick, who had the Mercury hat and who was a scientist. Here is where we're introduced to Barry Allen as the Flash, the second Flash. And the Silver Age actually brought us, more science fiction and as well as legacy characters. And within bringing legacy characters and with changing basically, different people to be Flash, this is when we also started getting reboots as well. So this is an important thing because basically we got a few superheroes having their origins drastically rebooted. Like I already mentioned the Flash. This is when we're introduced to Kyle Rayner as the Green Lantern as well too, and also this is where we actually get basically some different origins of particular characters. Particularly, we also had a change in the Human Torch from Marvel, who originally was an android and is now known as Johnny Storm within the Fantastic Four. Another thing that is important about the Silver Age was the idea of basically different dimensions being in place. Like I stated, comic books was going more in a sci-fi friendly era. And so basically with the science fiction, we got basically, different Earths. Hence, one of the reasons why a little bit later we had the Flash of Two Worlds in DC, where Barry Allen and Jay Garrick met each other, and this is where we learned what happened to some of the superheroes from the Golden Era within DC. Another big thing that happened, in the Silver Era was the start of, basically the big two within comics. When I mean the big two, I'm talking about DC and Marvel. DC actually, a lot of the Golden Age comics were under different publishers. DC consolidated almost everyone from their publishing. Like, they consolidated Action Comics, Detective Comics, Wiz Comics, and American All-Star. All that were under the DC flagship, where Timely Comics, who had Captain America, Submariner, and the Human Torch, went into Marvel. And this is where basically a lot of the people we see in the MCU, this is where they had their origins created during the Silver Age. The Avengers, a product of the Silver Age. Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, product of the Silver Age, So with the heightened interest of science fiction within comics, this relaunched the superhero boom within comics. However, there was a bit of controversy with the Silver Age. You see, in the 50s, there was a rise in juvenile delinquency, and a lot of psychologists at the time basically stated that one of the reasons for the rise of juvenile delinquency is because of younger people reading more and more comics. Hence, something was introduced known as the comic book code. That's something that I'll go into extreme depth with sometime in the future, because that requires a ton of research to basically go into detail with. However, with that said, interesting enough, the comic book code actually lasted until the 50s, all the way up until 2010. A little interesting right there. So that's the Silver Age. Oh, wait, one more thing. Before I go any further, I need to express something. The Silver Age is where basically introduce something else known as the buffoonery. You see, a lot of things that were kind of weird and really, really out there that, are kind of outdated, but they actually still incorporate in comics, a lot of that came from the Silver Age. For example, the Adam West Batman, part of the Silver Age. The bring me down, the shark repellent bat spray. Yeah, a product of the Silver Age. Outdated stuff, but still fairly important in comics, So that's just my basic rundown of the Silver Age and everything. Did you guys were aware of the Silver Age? Do you have any other comments or concerns or anything you want to know about this period of comics? Please drop me a comment below. Give me a like. Follow me on Facebook at Token Dave or on Twitter at Token Dave 80. Subscribe and ring that bell so you know when a new video loads. But until then, this has been Token Dave and Mellow the Menace over here, the dorky token black guy who just trying to get by. I'll catch all of you later.